Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be making some fun summary cards using Simple Stories Just Beachy paper pad. Here's a look at the paper pad I'll be using for all 5 cards. The colors are bright and cheerful, perfect for summertime. So let's go ahead and get started with card number 1. I will be using some card sketches for inspiration. The first sketch is from Freshly Made Sketches. This is number 637. And if you are interested in any of the sketches I use in this video, I share all of that information on my coordinating blog post. The link is in the description box below, or you can simply head over to KristieMarcotte.com. For my first card, I selected 2 pattern papers. I have the wave paper for the background, and I'm using this colorful fish pattern for the 3 small squares. I rounded all of the corners of the squares using We Are Memory Keeper's corner chomper. I used the 1/4 inch size, and I'll layer all 3 of the squares on some dark teal cardstock. For the background of the card, most of it will feature the wave pattern paper, but on the very right side, I'm adding a 7/8 inch strip of light teal cardstock. And I did cut the wave paper just a little bit too short, but since I'm covering up that very right side with the cardstock piece, I wasn't worried about it. Then I'll put adhesive on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Next, I'll add the 3 squares featuring all of the fish. I'll line up all 3 of the squares on my card without adhesive. That way I can get the placement correct. I'll adhere this square in the center first, then add one below, and then finally add the top square. Now I could keep this card very simple, add a sentiment and be finished, but I thought it would be fun to add some ocean beach themed die cut images. I'm using a die set from Honeybee Stamps. This is their Lovely Layers Seashore set. I selected 2 of the shells and also the seagrass. Now I'm using some fun bright colors to match with the bright colors of the fish. For the first shell, I used 3 different shades of orange cardstock. And for the second shell, I used 2 shades of yellow cardstock. I'll just glue all of those pieces together. I've always enjoyed using Honeybee Stamps' Lovely Layer sets. They add such beautiful detail. The sentiment is wishing you oceans of joy, and this is from Honeybee Stamps' Seize the Day stamp and coordinating die set. Using the outline die, I cut out a second piece from some dark teal cardstock, layered the 2 together, creating a drop shadow underneath the sentiment. And that'll help it stand out against the background. I'll adhere the pink seagrass down first, putting it more on the left side of the fish squares. Then I'll add the yellow shell on the very left side, and I am popping it up using Scrapbook.com's large foam squares. This is the 1 millimeter thickness. I'll put the orange shell on the very right side, and I'm also popping it up using more of the foam squares. I'll be adding this sentiment on top of the shells and the grass. Since there's lots of different layers of cardstock and foam, I will add some scrap cardstock pieces on the very left side of the sentiment, and I'll also add a bit of foam between the 2 shells. Then I'll put barely art glue on the back of the rest of the sentiment and adhere it in place. For embellishments, I'm adding some enamel dots. These are from Alta New. This is their Sweet Dream set. The teal colors match beautifully with the pattern paper. I'll put 3 enamel dots in the upper right hand corner and 2 on the left side near the seagrass. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 1. I love how this turned out with the fun bright colors. For card number 2, the card sketch is from OWH. This is sketch number 219. I selected 3 pattern papers. I have the green with light pink palm trees for the background. At the very bottom of the card, using this fun rainbow stripe design. I'll adhere that narrow strip down first. For the large panel on the background of the card, I'm using the leaf tone-on-tone design. I'll layer everything on some dark green cardstock, and I'm using the same dark green cardstock for the narrow strip that goes across the card. And I did put some double-sided adhesive tape on the back of that narrow strip to adhere it in place. Now I'll layer the background piece on the dark green cardstock, put adhesive on the back, and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches. I will be using some die sets from scrapbook.com. I have their delicate leaves and also their Hello Sunshine word die set. I cut out 2 of the large fern leaves, and I'll be adhering them on the right side of the card instead of the circle element that's on the card sketch. Put glue on the back and adhere the 2 leaves in place, and I'll adhere them down at different angles. I'll place a large acrylic block on top for some added weight while the glue dries. Now I'll start working on the sentiment using Hello Sunshine. I use some white shimmer cardstock for the outline piece, pink pattern paper for the word hello, and orange cardstock for the word sunshine. To adhere the teeny tiny dot for the eye, I'll first add a small drop of Barely Art glue, then I'll pick up that tiny die cut piece using scrapbook.com's Craft Pro Pick tool. I'm using the wax tip end. Now I'll adhere the letters for the word hello. I like to start with the H, then I'll add the O. Next I'll add the right side L, and finally the last 2 letters. And I do it in this order since I find it easier to get all the letters evenly placed. I love this sentiment. It's part of their Marcotte Bloom collection, and I've been using it quite a bit lately. Using the outline die, I also cut out a piece from Vellum, and I'll layer the 2 pieces together, creating that drop shadow of Vellum underneath the sentiment. Now I'll flip over the sentiment, and I will be popping it up with some foam dimension. I'm using the small squares from scrapbook.com. This is their 1 millimeter thickness. I'll make sure to get good coverage. Then I'll remove the release paper and add the sentiment right on top of the 2 fern leaves. By adding the vellum layer underneath, I think it helps the sentiment stand out even more on the card. For a final finishing touch, I cut out 3 small circle die cuts. I used a set from Waffle Flower. I'll put glue on the back and adhere the 3 circles in the upper left-hand corner. I'm trying to make sure to get them evenly spaced. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 2. For card number 3, the card sketch is from OWH. This is number 231. I selected 3 pattern papers. I know that light yellow piece looks like cardstock, but it's actually the backside of one of the pattern papers. For the very background of the card, I'm using the narrow stripe paper. Next, I'll add the light yellow pattern paper on the right side. I'll layer the background piece on some dark green cardstock. And for the narrow strip on the left side of the card, it has mountains, palm trees, and a few other fun ocean images. After layering that piece on the same dark green cardstock, I'll adhere it on the left side of the card. Now I'll flip over this panel, put adhesive on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. For a sentiment, I've already stamped out Sending Sunshine and Smiles. And this sentiment is from Spellbinder's Sending Sunshine Sentiment stamp set. I stamped it on some of the green pattern paper that's included in the paper collection. I'll layer the sentiment strip on the same dark green cardstock, and I'll be adhering it about 1 inch up from the bottom of the card. Before I adhere it down, I will add a scrap cardstock piece on the right and left side where it goes off of that narrow strip of pattern paper. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere it in place. The die cut images are from Spellbinder's Coastal Escape View die set. I cut out 2 palm leaves and an anchor. I'll adhere the 2 leaves down at opposite angles, and I'm leaving a gap between the 2 leaves so there's enough space to add the anchor, although I will have the anchor partially sitting on top of the 2 leaves. I will pop up the anchor using Scrapbook.com's small foam squares. I did need to cut some of those squares in half in order to fit behind the tiny areas of the anchor. Once I have good coverage, I'll remove the release paper and adhere the anchor right between the 2 leaves, and I'm putting it at an angle. I also place the anchor so the very bottom of it is sitting on that sentiment strip. For a final finishing touch, I'm adding 3 small circle die cuts. I use the same circle die set from Waffle Flower. I'll put Barely Art glue on the back and adhere all 3 circles in the upper left-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 3. For card number 4, the card sketch is from Sugar Pea Designs. This is Sugar Sketch number 24. For the background of my card, I'm using this very bright yellow pattern paper that has white hibiscus all over it. For this strip on the left side of the card, I have this lovely floral design. I'll layer both of the pieces on some dark green cardstock, put adhesive on the back, and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I'll be adding a stitch circle die cut, and I cut this out from white shimmer cardstock. Before adhering it down, I'll add a scrap cardstock piece on the right side of the circle, just where it goes off of that floral strip. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere it in place. I cut out several different die cut pieces from the same Spellbinder's Coastal Escape View die set. And the sentiment is from Scrapbook.com's Flower Cart die set. And I have all those die cut pieces organized in one of Scrapbook.com's stack and sort trays. Didn't want to lose all those teeny tiny pieces. I have several leaves and foliage pieces, plus a pink hibiscus flower. I use pink cardstock for the main part of the flower. For that inside section, I use some of the light pink pattern paper, and I'll adhere the 2 pieces together, securing them with some double-sided adhesive tape on the back side. I cut out the very center piece of the flower from some bright yellow cardstock. I will be popping up the flower using some foam dimension. I'll first remove the release paper from the double-sided adhesive tape, then add some of the small foam squares on the back side. I'll adhere the 2 large palm leaves first. Then I'll attach the flower. Now I'll tuck in some of the foliage pieces on the right and left side of the flower. Since I've already attached the flower and there's not a lot of space to really tuck those foliage pieces underneath, you could add the foliage pieces down first and finish off with the flower. I like to add the flower or that main image. That way I can position the rest of the pieces around it. And sometimes I will trim those leaves or foliage pieces. That way they can still sort of tuck in underneath the flower. And that's what I'm doing for those 2 small dark green leaves. I cut the very bottom of them off. For a sentiment, I used some yellow cardstock for the word hello. And for the outline piece, I used some vellum. I'll glue the 2 pieces together. Then I'll put glue on the back, trying to put it only behind the word hello and not the vellum. And I'll adhere the sentiment underneath the pink hibiscus flower. I cut out 2 small stitch circle die cuts. I used some of the green, sort of distressed looking pattern paper. I'll adhere the 2 circles in the upper right hand corner. Then for a final finishing touch, using Scrapbook.com's clear glitter brush marker, I'll add a little bit of sparkle to the word hello and also the center of the hibiscus flower. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 4. For card number 5, the card sketch is from OWH. This is number 254. I selected 3 pattern papers. I have a diagonal stripe paper for the background. For the large rectangle piece, I have this fun design, light pink in the background, and it looks like a bunch of different stickers with summer vacation designs. I'm also using some of the wave paper, and I cut that out using a circle die. I cut out a larger circle die cut from some dark teal cardstock, adhered the wave circle on top, and I'll adhere it on the very right side of that sticker looking pattern paper. Now I'll flip it over, use my scissors, and trim off the overhang. After adhering that panel on the diagonal stripe pattern paper, I'll put adhesive on the back and add my card front onto a card base. For a sentiment, I'll be adding the word hello, and this is part of Scrapbook.com's Thank You Set Number 3 word die set. I used some pattern paper for the word hello, and I cut out a second word hello from some bright pink cardstock. I'll layer the 2 hello words together, creating that bright pink drop shadow underneath. And for the outline of the word, I used some white shimmer cardstock. I love the look of the pink and white stripe pattern paper for the word hello, but it didn't stand out enough. But by having that bright pink shadow underneath, I think it really helps it pop. For the narrow strip that goes in the middle of the circle, I did cut it a little bit wider. I used some light teal cardstock, and I'm layering it on some vellum. It'll add just that little extra detail. Before adhering it down, I am adding a scrap cardstock piece on the very left side where it goes off of the circle. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere it in place. And it'll be flush all the way on the right side next to the circle. This is where I'll be adding the sentiment, and that's why I cut that strip a little bit wider. Wanted to make sure it was big enough to fit the sentiment. I will pop up the sentiment using some of the large squares from Scrapbook.com. I'll remove the release paper and adhere the sentiment. Using a small scrap piece of pink cardstock, I'll add a banner in the upper left-hand corner. I'll first cut a fishtail on the bottom, then I'll cut the right side in slightly at an angle, flip it over, and do the same thing on the other side. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere it in place. For a final finishing touch, using more of Alta News enamel dots, I'll put 2 in the upper left-hand corner and 3 around the sentiment in the lower right-hand corner. Now here's another look at the 5 cards I made using Simple Stories Just Beachy paper pad, along with an assortment of fun stamp and die sets. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links in the description box below. And for more inspiration using this paper collection, head on over to Scrapbook.com's channel, where I share another video featuring this collection, and I make several more fun summery cards. And I will add a link to that video in the description box below and at the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.